So what you're saying is that, because you're talking about the elimination of property tax, right? And then your concern is, you know, how do we fund the legitimate purposes of government, like our sheriff, right? And how does our sheriff get funded if we eliminate property tax? Because that's how he gets funded, right? And that's a concern. So I'm going to go through this, but what is the problem with property tax right now? What's the problem with it? And I haven't forgot that I got a question here. What's the problem?
It's basically saying the government owns what you own and then paying them to have it.
You never own your property. Never. You have to pay until the day you die. And then if your kids don't pay it that next year, they lose it. And so it is the state's way of deifying itself and saying that it owns everything. And it is a problem. And in fact, kind of to emphasize that, Karl Marx, the founder of communism, said that communism can be summed up into one sentence: the abolition of private property. And this is a way in which the state abolishes private property, because ownership is the control of. And if you lose the ability to control it, you don't truly own it. And if the state has the power to take it because you don't pay them, then you don't own it. So it is extremely important, in order to uphold the right to own and control property, to change the way in which our legitimate purposes of government are funded, to eliminate property tax. And I'm proposing that, so let me go down through this. So I'm proposing that we replace the current property tax system, replace it with a consumption tax. And I'll go through this really quickly with you. And then I got one more question right back there, and I'll answer that, and then I'll wrap this up. Okay, so our current system, the average home right now in Idaho is a little above $400,000. I know in the cities, it's $550,000 for an average home in the city. Imagine that. There's a whole lot of problems there. We can talk about that we have an affordable housing crisis that's going to be detrimental to our children if we don't correct it. But I don't have time to address that. So let's take this average home of $400,000. And so the property owner would pay every year on this home $2,000 to $3,000 in property tax a year. And that would be, in a 30-year period, the state would collect $60,000 to $90,000 a year. Okay? Or excuse me. Thank you for correcting me. Collect, in a 30-year period, $60,000 to $90,000. So the reason I say 30-year period is because that's about the length of a mortgage, right? So now, I want to replace it on consumption tax. So let's take that same $400,000 home, and let's say that we, at the time of sale, so the tax would be due at the time of the purchase, actually. At the time of purchase, 5%. Let's say 5% would be due at the time of purchase. So the home, let's say a $400,000 home, it would be due, $20,000 would be due at the time it was purchased. And that $20,000 could either be paid off, or it could be rolled into the mortgage. Okay? But the point is the state gets its money at the very beginning of the purchase, the very beginning. And no longer does the person owe the state, and no longer does the state have any interest in it. Well, you might be saying, well, $20,000 is a far cry from $60,000 to $90,000, right? Well, you have to calculate that the average home sells 3 to 5 times in a 30-year period. So therefore, the tax that's collected on that same home through a consumption tax is actually $60,000 to $100,000. So it's more than enough. It replaces the property tax. Does everybody follow that? But what's the difference?
When you own your home, you own your
Once the
home.
mortgage is paid off, once you paid that off at the beginning of the sale, either through a mortgage or you just pay it off, you own your home. No longer does the state have interest in it. You own it. And so it pays for the legitimate purposes of government, but it also protects the right to private property. And I believe that we need to take our property tax system and crumble up an old wall and get rid of it and replace it. Now, there's some graduation period, some period of time where we have to move into that, and I've addressed that in other places. Like if you go to my website, goldmoney.com, I've addressed that.